All right, and we're back. We are the Three Dudes of Horror. I'm Toots.
Damien.
Now I'm Worm Boy.
And actually, we're doing a continuation of the subgenre of horror. Actually, we're going to kick it off with actually a continuation of sci-fi horror, because we started it last time and we got caught up with Bill Paxton, but we want to go back and emphasize on some movies that are near and dear to our hearts in terms of sci-fi. So I'll let you go first.
I mean, we can start, like, if we're gonna mention a new movie, we could talk. I wanted to mention The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
The John Carpenter's The Thing from
Yeah.
the early 1980s, which I think it's really good. I think it's a really good movie because the main element of it that I think makes it a good movie. I mean, aside from all the gore and the makeup effects and special effects and everything, which I think won or was nominated for a lot of awards and everything.
I'm not sure exactly what it was nominated for. And to kind of take a step back, like, I was a little kid when I saw the original, the thing from another world. I actually had it on VHS when I was a kid, but it was so long ago.
The good old days.
Yeah, and I remember bits and pieces, and instead of like an actual like thing that you didn't know what it was like a plant man or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't bad. It wasn't like very hokey like some of the movies from back then. But the John Carpenter's The Thing, to me, that's I would consider that probably one of the best horror movies, because you're involved with the characters, you're invested in them, all the practical effects, like you said. So, and everything is.
Were the special effects Stan Winston or?
Yes. Yeah, there was Stan Winston.
Well, what I was gonna say about that movie, about John Carpenter's The Thing, is the element of that movie that I liked the most was the paranoia.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's what made that a good movie to me. Like when they don't, like what you said, like they don't know who is the thing. They don't even know what the thing is.
Yeah.
And they're having to come up with ways to like test like they put all their blood in saucers.
Yeah.
They put a sample of every single person's blood in a saucer and they burn it or something.
Yeah,
to try to get a reaction out of it, to find out who is the thing.
Yeah, Kurt Russell's character McCready, he heats up a piece of metal.
Yeah.
And because the way he figures is that, well, this thing can imitate anything.
Right.
So it's not necessarily just tissue; it's actually part of the thing. It's like a separate thing. So they're testing everybody's blood like in petri dishes, and until that I'm trying to remember his name, Palmer, the druggie, like the one, like the toker, and like they test his blood, and then that's where the thing reacts.
Yeah. And then, because it seemed like at the beginning of the movie, they seemed like this real like tight knit like crew of guys, and then slowly throughout the movie, it starts to unwind, and they start like not trusting each other, and it's more and more tension building because of the paranoia, like I said. And to me, that's what stuck out to me that made that movie good.
Yeah, and I think to me, because like I said, I really love the effects in this movie, and I think what really kind of brought it home to me was the fact that, like you said, it was a tight knit group, so you were emotionally invested with these characters, so you knew who they were and you knew what they did, and
yeah, they were like friends.
Yeah,
or they were friends, and
it's one of those parts of that formula that you really don't get anymore in terms of horror movies nowadays, in my opinion.
I agree with that too, because nowadays it's just like, oh, who is this guy? Like,
yeah,
they don't really work on the characters as much.
Yeah, you don't really pick up on anybody's names.
A lot of times there's no substance to the characters anymore. They're just like disposable, horror stereotypical characters like the dumb blonde.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or the jock or something. Like that.
I was about to say the toker.
Yeah, pretty much the characters in the cabin in the woods.
There you go.
Yeah, and but it was, but like I said, with this movie, the way it was written, it's like you knew who these characters were, and you saw the chemistry, pop out. But yeah, like what else?
The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
The Fly. Now that one, the makeup and the practical effects is what I remember the most about that movie.
Oh yeah, and
not that the characters were bad, because they were like Jeff Goldblum did a good job.
Gina Davis. Mm-hmm.
But I remember and then he slowly starts to go more and more insane as his body's changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he's collecting his body parts in his medicine cabinet, as they're falling off of him.
Yeah, like his teeth are coming out.
Yeah.
And the Jeff Goldblum's character was already weird enough as it is, because it's Jeff Goldblum and he's awesome. but he just becomes more demented as after the experiment, and the experiment went awry, and he feels like he's a badass now, because he feels like he's very strong and full of energy. And I remember one of the parts that really kind of stuck in my head was when I think it was the ex-boyfriend or ex-husband or somebody that was with Gina Davis.
Is that where he puked on him?
Yeah, he puked on his hand and dissolves it.
That's gross.
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, like I said, the practical effects are great in that movie.
Well, with sci-fi horror, there's a movie that I want to watch because I've read a lot about it, but I haven't actually seen it, and I was going to defer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Was Scanners.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last time I saw it, and it does have one memorable moment. I think if anybody's seen the movie or has heard of the movie, they think of this one scene where this one broadcaster or no, not a broadcaster. It was somebody that was making a reading off of something, because like I said, it's been a while since I've seen the movie.
Yeah, a script.
No, not a script. They were just reading off of something. It might have been a broadcaster, but like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it. And Michael Ironside is one of the main characters in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, and he's actually the scanner, the person that has these telekinetic powers, and I think they were testing those powers out, and it caused the guy's head to explode.
Oh shit!
And of course, this is David Cronenberg, and I believe late 70s, early 80s. So those effects were practical.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a head, well, not a real head, but you see a dummy head pretty much exploding
with no CGI blood.
Yeah, and Michael Ironside, he tries to get away, and I think he manages to control people and whatnot. I'm trying to think of what else. And there was this other character that's trying to stop him, and I believe he was also a scanner. So it pretty much came from this experiment that they're trying to have people become telekinetic.
So, but that's what the movie's about. They're doing experiments to try to make people telekinetic.
More or less, it's actually more. The movie is more the fact that Michael Ironside escapes, or he's trying to hide out, and pretty much the government agencies and this main character, I can't remember what the guy's name is. They're actually going and trying to stop him. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because what I've read about it is that it's a real intelligent horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's that was what gave it an edge.
Yeah, and like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it, but
so he's a scientist that's gone rogue.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember if he was a scientist or he was just a test subject. But he pretty much goes rogue, and then if he wants to control something or somebody, he starts using his scanner powers. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely something I want to see. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'm honestly not doing it justice, but To be perfectly honest, like I said, I'm kind of just basing off of like old memories.
We'll do our homework and rewatch it, and then we'll give our quick take on it on some podcast down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, just real quick, I know this definitely counts as like action horror, but the Terminator Part 1, could that be considered a horror movie? Just Part 1. I know like the subsequent sequels were considered like action, not really horror, but
I don't know. I don't.
The first one where the Terminator is like stalking Sarah Connor, and it seems like it has a lot of horror elements in terms of like.
I mean, it could be. I mean, it's like a sci-fi thriller.
It is sci-fi.
It is, yeah, for sure. It's in the sci-fi genre. To call it horror, I'm not sure.
I would call it sci-fi action.
Sci-fi it's more sci-fi action. Now, one of the big ones, and we kind of brought it up a little bit. Actually, these two we kind of brought it up a little bit with Predator, the Predator franchise, and Alien franchise.
No, Jesus, those are
those
are huge.
Oh yeah, those are massive.
Alien's got to be the best example of sci-fi horror.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
My favorites though are the first three.
Yeah.
And a lot of like David Fincher gets a lot of crap for Alien 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even he isn't really satisfied with like the result, like the finished product of Alien 3. But I like the first three. Like not equally. I think Aliens Part 2 is probably my favorite, but I do like the first Alien, and the first Alien had like that really good claustrophobia element.
Yeah, the first Alien, it had that claustrophobia. It also had that suspense where you didn't know where this alien, could be hiding out.
Yeah. The fact that you didn't see the alien very much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't see it very often. It was stalking them. It was somewhere they didn't know where it was, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, that's what made it scary.
Yeah, and I'm remembering the part where Tom Skerritt is, I believe he's like in one of the portions of the ship. They're trying to find out something what happened, and then the alien just like that just pops out.
Yeah.
No, but I like the first two. The first two I think are classics. Part 3 was okay. It didn't bother me as much as other people. I thought it was all right. Resurrection was a piece of shit, in my opinion. Oh my god, there were so many things wrong with that movie.
Well, Joss Whedon wrote that screenplay, and he wanted, and like his idea was actually that it was going to be more of like there was going to be more of a comedic edge to it, but the director made it really like serious and intense. So like those two visions like coming together kind of made it choppy.
Like, you can't have that. You have to be on the same page.
And because I'm thinking the one scene I'm remembering is where Dan Hedaya, I guess he's like the colonel or something like that. He's like a captain or something like that, and he's saluting, and the alien comes up from behind and like, and attacks him like in the back of the head.
I remember.
And the fact that he's just like, no, what the hell's happening? I think I'm bleeding from the back. It's like, really? Like you got an alien bite you from the back of the head.
And you're not doing
Most people would scream,
Doesn't he like reach back and like pull
and pulls like a piece of brain.
Yeah,
he's like,
and he's like looking at it like.
Yeah, you would. Now I understand if it was for comedic reasons, I could see how that would play out. But the fact that they played it serious, it's like
that's
no.
What I mean.
It was in a natural reaction.
A normal human would not react this way.
If it would have had more, not a completely comedic tone, but a lot more comedy than it did, the finished product, it probably would have been a better movie. And that example you gave is like a perfect example.
Yeah, and and right now I'm just kind of sticking with the first four because I know Prometheus is like a prequel. And then I believe the second Alien movie is coming out this year, right?
Yeah, that one looks good.
Yeah.
I think it's coming out pretty soon, like within weeks. So it's kind of ironic we're talking about the Alien movies right now. I saw Prometheus just once. I need to watch it again.
Yeah, I only saw it one time, and I thought it was okay. I wasn't too impressed by it because I just didn't really like the characters that much. The only one I liked was Michael Fassbender's character, and he was the droid. You know, the one thing that doesn't have a soul according to people, and that's like, oh no, he's my favorite character.
Well, you know, when I saw that movie, I didn't even know that was in the Alien universe. I didn't realize until they started making references to the Wayland Corporation and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's an Alien prequel, I guess.
Yeah, and we could bring up Alien versus Predator, but I actually want to save those for that one episode where we're just gonna bring up like the really either awesomely bad or just very shitty like horror movies.
Yeah, let's save that
because
one.
we'll save that one.
Well, one we have to mention before we move on from sci-fi horror is The Mist.
Yeah, and
the Stephen King adaptation, because I'm just gonna say it, like, I'm very impressed with that movie. I think it's really good.
Yeah, and I remember reading the original story years ago, and the ending is very different. The ending in the movie is very different. Because spoiler alert, you know, like Thomas Jane kills his family or wherever.
What? No.
Yeah. Yeah, so you've been warned.
Oh, okay, and that doesn't happen in the book.
It doesn't, not from what I remember, it doesn't happen. I think they managed to get away from the store. And I think at the end of the story, they're just hiding out. But you start seeing more of these aliens, and they're super huge, and they're trying to get away. And I think the last part of the story is that they're just hiding out, and they're essentially trying to survive, you know.
But what made that movie really interesting to me was how, you know, when tension builds, when that large number of people are stuck in that supermarket together, and they don't know what's going on the outside.
Yeah.
And they start like breaking off into factions, and there's that one, you know, wild religious lady that starts influencing a lot of people and almost like brainwashing a lot of. I think that's where the director was going with that.
Yeah.
And some people want to take their chances and venture out into the mist, and other people are trying to convince them, you know, they're like, no, we've seen the monsters that are out there, and, you know, don't go. And that's what made it interesting to me, that it was seeing different people's reactions to being in a situation like that.
Yeah. And before we move on, let's go ahead and touch up on the Predator franchise.
Yeah.
Which I understand there's only Predator 2, but
Predators.
Well,
Predators. And then Alien versus Predator, but like I said, we'll save that for another day.
Well, Predator, the first one,
is
a classic.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Anybody our age, like, somebody's gonna tell you, no, I didn't think Predator was that good. We're gonna be like, fuck off.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of like action horror. It can't not be action if it's got Arnie in it.
Yeah, but it's also sci-fi.
But it's sci-fi.
It has sci-fi elements to it.
To me, it could qualify as sci-fi horror simply because, like, there's a killer. And it's like the same elements we were talking about earlier, where they don't know what the killer's motive is. They don't know who they are. They don't know that it's an alien being.
That's a hunter, pretty much.
Right. That's like the perfect killing machine. That's like the perfect hunter.
Yeah.
So.
And I remember I watched the first one at theaters when I was 6 years old.
What the
and
hell?
I still remember.
6 years old? Who took you there?
My dad, actually, my dad and my older brother were supposed to go.
We're giving away our age here.
Yeah. And So do the math. And my dad and my older brother were supposed to go to the theater to watch it. I wanted to tag along because I was the younger brother, so I was like, I want to go where they go. And my mom was like, no, like you're gonna get scared, then you're gonna want to leave. And I'm like, no, like I'll be fine. And we went to the theater and we watched it, and I had a great time. Like, me being 6 years old, I didn't really know all the little intricacies of the plot.
Yeah.
I just knew, like, oh wow, this monster has awesome vision and is killing people, you know? In horrific ways.
And I think it's funny that this is actually true. Like, I didn't think it was the truth when I first heard about it, that Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally going to be...
Yeah, I heard
he
that.
was originally going to be the Predator.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was bullshit. Like, but it's actually real. Like, but he couldn't handle the heat of being in the suit, like out there in the jungle, wherever they were. I don't know where they shot the movie. Like, that he couldn't handle like the temperature.
Yeah, and so he got out of the movie.
But it's kind of funny.
That's kind of a good thing.
No, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those like happy ending things in the long run, because you think about, like, what if he actually would have finished the movie and then the Predator is like this tiny little like
Belgian,
because it ended up being Kevin Peter Hall.
Yeah, Kevin Peter Hall,
8 feet tall or something. I don't know, he was like around 7 feet.
Yeah, he was like 7 feet. Oh, he was also in Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah.
And fun fact, he was actually the pilot at the very end.
Yeah.
Like after the explosion and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was his little cameo.
The helicopter pilot that's trying to find like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's Kevin Peter Hall.
And he was in Predator 2. Also. He came back to play the Predator.
Yeah. And of course Bill Paxton came out in that one too. But I really liked Predator 2 also. Like, and it was such a fun take where, they're in the city, so it's now a different type of jungle, quote, and then like, of course, like these gangs, like there's this rivalry, and Predator just comes and just messes everything up.
But I think the really interesting thing about the Predator movies is how the Predator like stalks for a while. He watches the conflict and
then he gets them.
He pinpoints the best prey, like the biggest challenge, the best fighters, the most skilled fighters, the most dangerous fighters, and then also that the Predator always wants to make it fair once it gets down to that prey. Yeah,
because if they don't see the person as a threat, like they don't have any weapons,
they don't attack.
Or for instance, the one detective that's pregnant, the one cop that's pregnant, remember,
right,
in the subway, then he won't attack him. It's not like this, mindless killer that's going around.
Yeah, because it's all for sport.
Yeah, it's all for sport. And if I remember correctly, in the ship, once he's getting like the skulls and everything, and he's putting in the trophy room, you can see like the alien head. Yeah, the alien head in there.
Which I never noticed when I was a kid. That got past me. Somebody.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that until later. Like when somebody pointed it out.
And that's actually not a myth. That is an alien skull. Like they threw that in there, like I guess to see who would pick up on it. Or...
Yeah, and I love the fact that when Danny Glover manages to kill the Predator, and instead of killing him, like they kind of see him as like this worthy adversary, and
they praise him almost.
Yeah, and they give him this weapon from like 1885. Which is pretty cool. I was like, wow, they've been here before.
I was the whole movie. I was waiting for Danny Glover to say, "I'm too old for this shit."
Yeah.
No, but actually, I read online that there's a short comic strip where they explain that revolver.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that it was from maybe that same Predator that tosses it to him.
Yeah,
because I don't know if they can time travel or.
I don't think so. I think they were just visiting the planet like every so often.
Well, there's a name written on that revolver, it's an Italian pirate or something, and he back in that time, whenever that Italian pirate was alive, the Predator spotted him as his ultimate challenge, and like I said, and then he set up like a fair fight, a duel, a sword fight.
Yeah.
And somehow the Predator gets cheated out of the fair fight. Like one of the people that the pirate stole from shoots him dead before they get to like have the duel.
Yeah.
And like with his last breath, he gives the Predator the revolver, and the Predator leaves his sword next to the guy.
Oh, okay.
And then that's, I guess, why they give it to Danny Glover in Predator 2. Never knew that till recent, but
yeah, I didn't know that till now. Okay, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna go ahead and move on to found footage.
The big one.
Yeah, it's
fairly young subgenre of horror. It's a fairly young subgenre of horror, and I think anybody will agree that it all started with the Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah.
That was the one that created the found footage.
And I remember at the time when it first came out that everybody was like, "Oh, it's true, like what you see," or it's like
that's
what
I
started.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I actually believed it. I was I guess naive.
Well, I believed it for about 15 minutes, and then I was just like, "Okay, no, I don't think this is." Yeah. And then I think that's when people like on TV were like, "No, it's just a movie."
It's just a movie. Yeah.
But it took a while. I remember like being in school and hearing rumors like, no, it's actually footage like that they recovered, and those kids are missing, and there's some witch in Maryland, and it was like this. It became like an urban myth for a while.
Yeah, and then back then we don't have technology like we do now, so it was very difficult for me to like, oh shit, is it real? Can I just Google that?
Yeah.
And I never wanted to believe it, but there's always that part of you that wants to believe it.
Yeah.
But then I didn't say anything, and I didn't continue the rumors until I saw the movie. And I thought it was a good movie. Like some people gave it a lot of shit. Like it's just they're just whining the whole time. And
kind of were.
Yeah, but that's
they were. Yeah,
but yeah, they were. But in a way, that's what made it realistic.
Yeah.
And that's what made it seemed like the actual footage of like what would happen like if 3 kids got lost in the woods and they got stranded and they kept getting turned around and they start panicking.
The part that I think is the grossest when you see her crying and I don't know if they were boogers
the
or
drip.
Yeah, the drip.
Yeah.
That was gross.
But again, it's made it realistic.
They wanted to make it real, so.
Yeah, and so there was Blair Witch, and then
the Book of Shadows was a horrendous piece of shit.
No, but that wasn't found footage though.
No, it wasn't found footage. It was just, I guess, a sequel.
I guess we'll put that in our list of shitty movies when we get to that episode.
Yeah, write that down for the awesomely bad.
Yeah. Along with Jason X and everything else.
Jason X keeps getting mentioned in every one of our podcasts.
Yeah, he's coming to get us.
Yeah,
it's that crabby. It finds its way into every conversation.
But there was also the Blair Witch, the one that came out this past year.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one. How was that one?
It was alright. It was okay.
It wasn't terrible, but throughout a lot of the movie, it's essentially like a lot of just rehash of the first Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
Really?
There's a group of kids that get lost in the woods, and they start seeing all the little figurines hanging from the trees, but it had a lot of different elements too, though. Like when it played with time. Yeah,
that's the one thing I really enjoyed about this new one is the fact that this Blair Witch or whatever really kind of messed with people's sense of time. Where you see, spoiler alert, we're gonna get into some parts here.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. So, like for instance, that one couple that originally wanted to go to that area, and then they were like, "Well, we're gonna get out of here," and then the main characters are still walking around, and they were only, according to them, they were lost for a few hours.
You're right.
But that other couple said they were lost for 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you actually see a difference, in
they
appearance.
show up all dirty and muddy and
And that's one thing I really liked about this new one. And
I liked how they kind of explained a little bit more the whole thing about how they end up standing against the wall, like facing the wall.
Yeah.
And that it, like, spoiler alert again, that it's actually not the witch doing it. It's actually the people trying to avoid looking at her, because when they look at her, that's when they die, or that's when she attacks, or that's how she's able to, like, really get in their mind and get them to do things. Like, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. But other than that, I thought that movie was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
It's in the B- range.
Yeah, I would even say probably like C+ to B-.
Well, if we're gonna talk about found footage, we need to mention one of the classics, the Cannibal Holocaust, which I don't even know if the director meant to shoot it as found footage or not.
I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to say, because he probably wasn't thinking about, like, oh, let's make it found footage per se.
Right.
Not like how it's been for the past, like, decade or so, or past couple of decades at least. I guess he just kind of wanted to. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Where it's just like, well, he wanted to
make it really realistic.
Yeah, he wanted to make it as realistic as possible.
And he succeeded a little bit too well, because I read that a lot of people thought it was real because it was so realistic, like all the torture and all the director, like, it got banned in a bunch of countries.
Yeah.
And then director actually had to go to court.
Holy shit.
Because they thought that he had killed the actors. Like, it was an actual, like, people thought it was an actual snuff film.
That's a great movie right there.
Not found footage, but the people actually thought it was an actual snuff film. So he had to go to court, and he actually had to present the actors in court to prove that he didn't kill them. And they're like, no, look, here they are. They're right in front of you. Like, they're okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good horror movie.
Like, yeah, when it's that, when people can believe it that much, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, if it really messes with society like that, Now, whether you want to consider it right or wrong, that's really up to the person.
Well, I mean, I don't think he meant to.
Yeah, like, but I could just imagine the courtroom, like, no, for real, like, they're still alive,
Yeah, they're right here.
Yeah.
See, they're still moving, they're still breathing.
And I was really, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was really into the Paranormal Activity franchise. I looked forward to the sequels, and it seemed like it was going somewhere interesting, and then it just, like, by the time the Ghost Dimension, it just, like, tanked.
Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of, like, movies that have 3 or 4 or 5 movies,
Yeah.
Like, after a while, they're like
the Saw movies.
Yeah, it's like, after a while, it's like, well, our best was before, now we're just trying to milk it.
Because I've seen, out of the Saw movies, I've seen the first 3. And I thought the first one was great. I really liked that one. Part 2 was pretty good. I still enjoyed that one. And part 3 was, it was okay. And then I just didn't bother seeing the rest of them, because I kind of figured that were going to be more or less the same.
Well, I liked part 1 and 2 for the whole like element of, like, the forced attrition, like where they're forced to mutilate themselves physically, like really brutal mutilation to get out of a situation, and it's like a form of punishment for like something that they did. And I started to like lose interest in part 3, the same as you did, because that element of forced attrition was taken out, because the character, if I remember correctly, was he got put in the little jigsaw funhouse, I guess. But it wasn't him that was being physically tortured. It was people that had a series of people that had wronged him.
Yeah.
And his whole test was he had to free them from whatever torture device they were in.
Yeah, I think if I was the character, that main character, because I remember like his wife or his ex-wife or something like was cheating on him or something like that, like while they were still together, and I think there were like a few other people, but I think if I was the main character and these people have wronged me, I would have been like, great, okay.
Well, but I see your point, but
yeah.
I started to lose interest in the Saw, and then because the forced attrition element was what I thought made the movie good.
Yeah.
Made the franchise good, which was there in part 1 and part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then I rented part 4 and tried to watch it, and I fell asleep.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know. I've only seen the first 2, so.
And I was just like, I'm not.
But yeah, like part 3 didn't really impress me that much, and like I said, if I was that guy, I would have been like, well, they're screwed.
They fucked me over.
Yeah, like they fucked me over. They're screwed, you know.
I'll be
like,
there sitting and smoking a cigarette and drinking.
Because I'm a sadistic bastard. Yeah. All right. Now another one that came to mind a while ago in terms of found footage is Diary of the Dead, and it's a zombie one, but it's also
found footage.
Found footage.
That's a good movie.
I like it. I enjoy it very much. Like
I liked it. To me, it's nowhere as good as like the first Romero movies. You know, like Night and Dawn and Day. You know, I still enjoyed it though. I
liked it. It was different, and it felt like legit. The characters were like.
I think
it had an interesting story though too. It kept your attention.
Yeah. I think if there's one qualm that I had with it is the fact that it took itself way too seriously.
Yeah.
Like they really kind of played like we gotta film this for history. I'm like, I'm sure no one's gonna be around to actually see it.
And the thing was the earlier Romero films, they had that element of comedy at certain points.
Yeah, that it was so over the top, especially when they had like the buffet scenes. You know, where like for instance in Day of the Dead, where the group of soldiers were getting torn apart, and in Dawn of the Dead, where the bikers were getting torn apart and things like that. And I'm trying to remember Diary of the Dead. I don't think it had any scene like that. Like there were people being eaten here and there.
No, I don't remember it having that.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything like that.
But I did like when they went to that fucking house towards the end.
Yeah,
badass house.
But just imagine, it's found footage. You're holding the camera, and then you walk into this room, and it's just all these people are just being eaten and torn apart, and you see the whole thing.
Yeah, and how can you be able to hold the camera? I would freak out.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the guy was still filming. I was like, fuck that, I'll run.
Yeah, I would throw the camera at the zombie that was nearest to me, and then book it, make a run for it.
Curiosity will probably keep, have you stay there for the first like 5 seconds, and oh, holy shit,
yeah.
Like, check this shit out, and then you run off.
Yeah, that guy had balls.
But it's like found footage now is becoming like a lot of them are like cliche, where they're following like a cookie cutter formula of found footage, where a lot of times like the lore or the storyline that they set up in the movie, like the first act is semi-interesting because it seems like it's going somewhere. And then as you watch the movie, it just seems like the writers were just like, okay, we already gave them an interesting concept, so the second and third act are just garbage. There's a lot of examples like that. Chernobyl Diaries is one example. As Above, So Below.
Like for instance with Paranormal Activity, I like the first 2. I really liked the first one. I thought it was a bit overhyped when it first came out because it was like it's the scariest movie ever.
No,
which in my opinion, Exorcist is still like the scariest.
Exorcist.
But that's me. That's my opinion. Now for Paranormal Activity, I thought it was, I thought they did I thought they did very well in terms of found footage, where they had a good excuse in terms of okay, well, strange stuff is happening. Let me set up a camera and try to capture all this. And then part 2 was more or less the same. And then part 3, I believe that's the one that took place like in the 80s.
Yeah, where the sisters are little girls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was like the Origins movie.
Yeah.
Like,
where, I mean, that's when I started to tell like it was starting to kind of go downhill.
Yeah, and now they're making part 4, right?
No, like they already made like a few other ones.
Yeah, the Ghost Dimension was the 6th one.
Yeah.
What?
And I think they stopped calling them
Holy
by
shit.
the number in the franchise because to avoid that, like.
Yeah, I think I got up to like part 4.
I only saw the first 2.
I got up to like part 4, and after a while, like it seemed like the movies are just kind of running into each other,
Yeah, they after a while there was like a motif in the movies or where they always find a way to reference or to connect it to the first one.
To the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I mean, it sounds silly, but the marked ones is kind of like one of my guilty pleasures. Like, I honestly, like, I like that one, but I think because like the reason they made that one was because the franchise, they started noticing that the Paranormal Activity franchise had a big following in the Latino community.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they made the marked ones take place
I didn't know
in
that.
Stockton in California with like a mostly all Latino cast. And to me, the only thing that was like a guilty pleasure, I guess, is because where we're from.
Mm-hmm.
Like the marked ones, which is volume 5 in the franchise.
No, I haven't seen that one, or the Ghost Dimension. I haven't seen those.
Well, in the marked ones, it's kind of like they because all the folklore and everything that we grow up around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the marked ones, it was like the whole brujeria and the Santa Muerte and all that. In that movie, it's all real.
Yeah.
It's all real, and these kids encounter it. Like, to me, that was the only thing that like made it interesting to me. But I guess like someone that's not born or like someone that doesn't live around all that stuff wouldn't have that same connection,
Interest.
that same interest and connection in it. But then, so I was actually really hyped up for the Ghost Dimension because of that movie. And then when the Ghost Dimension came out, it was painfully obvious that they had just like completely run out of like their edge, like their substance. Like they were trying really hard.
Did they throw La Llorona in there also, or
no?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They could have though.
Yeah. And
real quick in found footage though.
Mm-hmm.
There's a found footage film that I haven't seen yet that I've been reading a lot of interesting stuff about it, and I've seen interesting stuff on the internet about it. It's Troll Hunter. It's a Norwegian found footage movie, and to me, it seems like what we were just talking about the marked ones.
Mm-hmm.
Troll Hunter is like the same for Norwegian people, because their big folklore is trolls, and it's like it's a found footage movie about that trolls are actually real, and and the Norwegian government has been covering it up, and the people that are filming the footage in the movie somehow stumble upon the trolls. Like that, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't really give my 2 cents about it. But
I haven't seen it.
But I want to see it because it's getting good reviews. Like, I haven't read that much like negative reviews about it. So
yeah. Now the one movie, I guess, before we move on to the next subgenre is a Cloverfield, which I have yet to actually see.
wow.
I have yet to actually see. I'm almost ashamed of myself.
No, I was gonna say that surprised me that you hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, because other than Blair Witch, usually when people think of found footage, usually they kind of like, oh, Cloverfield, I mean, I've heard of what happens or what it's about and this and that, but I've never actually sat down and actually watched it.
What's your take on it?
I thought it was good. Found footage for me has always been like good, but not something that I'm really into.
So like the weakest for you, like the weakest subgenre for you.
I mean, it the camera just moves so much, and I I get dizzy. But Cloverfield, I thought it was good because of the monster that comes out.
To me, it seemed like
it freaked me out when it came out because nobody knew till like towards the end, right?
Yeah.
Where like, what the hell is it? And people were like,
well, running. It's like that kind of gets into the marketing.
Yeah.
Like J.J. Abrams' marketing is like genius. He never reveals too much in the trailers or in the because I know the Cloverfield universe because now they have 10 Cloverfield Lane and there's a third one coming out in the Cloverfield universe that I hear is going to take place in space, but they never reveal too much. Like they reveal just enough to keep it really, really interesting. But because I think like the big reveal for
so the third one's going to be in space.
That's what I heard.
That just reminds me of Jason in Space. Sorry.
Like Jason and Leprechaun.
Well, that's what I hear. I don't know, but because I think
that have to do with horror don't do well.
Yeah.
The big teaser for
except for like Alien, like that was, yeah.
Well, the big teaser for the original Cloverfield was like the Statue of Liberty head coming flying down the street.
Yeah.
And they don't explain how that happened. Like that's like basically all they showed in the trailer.
Yeah.
But to me, I thought it was really good because it was like going into all the classic monster movies. Like Cloverfield was like if they recovered footage that somebody filmed like a monster attacking the city, like those countless Godzilla, King Kong.
Yeah.
Where the creature is attacking the city.
Yeah.
Like to me, they did it really well. Like it seemed like footage that someone would actually.
Yeah,
film.
it looked real. It looked real to me.
Yeah, and so I guess that's I guess I'll assign where it's my homework to watch it and give
your 2 cents.
Yeah, give my 2 cents on it next time
because it's one of those rare found footage movies that's actually really good. Like
and it's so weird how sometimes with found footage, and I guess like Diary of the Dead's kind of guilty of this too, where it's like it's supposed to be like this one almost seamless take, like it's found footage and whatnot, and then they're like editing parts in there.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, with Diary of the Dead, they actually do mention that they are trying to make this movie.
Yeah.
So I can understand some of the editing, but I'm trying to remember, but there are a couple of moments where, in order to get some of the footage, they would have to make an edit somewhere by 2 different cameras, and it's like, but they only have this one camera. So how are they getting this other perspective?
Well, with Cloverfield, they did that. They did it in a really I think it was genius. They figured out a way to do that. Is every time there's a cut, they show footage that the main character had accidentally recorded over the same film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was and then it's genius because that original footage that he had recorded over, like it ties into the story of the movie also.
Yeah.
And then they show the big. Well, I can't say. I can't give.
Yeah, don't tell them.
I can't give spoilers because Toots hasn't seen the movie.
Yeah.
I just know there's a monster. I just don't know
Yeah, you'll see.
Yeah.
Well, now that we're talking about monsters, I guess we can move on to the monster subgenre.
Yeah, monster. I guess you could say monster/natural.
Monster/natural.
Yeah, where you get into the universal monsters like Frankenstein and Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and then you also have some of those natural ones like, for instance, Jaws.
Great movie.
Or
hell, even like Arachnophobia,
that's Damon's favorite. He loves spiders.
Terrified of spiders. I hate that movie.
Yeah, so of course with monster movies, usually when somebody mentions that, the first thing they think of usually is like Frankenstein and Dracula. And
like other than Nosferatu.
But
like other than Nosferatu, like the Universal monster movies were like the ones that started the subgenre.
Yeah.
Which my favorite is the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman.
Oh yeah. I actually have that on DVD.
So do I. And the Bela Lugosi Dracula. I actually like when you watch that movie. To be honest, like it's a pretty bad movie, but
Yeah, but for its time.
Yeah, you have to think like, oh, it was for its time.
Yeah.
But Bela Lugosi knocked it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was the one. I mean, I think he was the one that basically created that image that everyone has nowadays of Dracula. With the accent and the cape and the slick back hair.
Yeah.
And I did like the spin that Gary Oldman tried to do with Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh, he kicked ass.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good actor.
Yeah, Gary Oldman is one of those where he'll
do
pretty
no
much
wrong.
He's pretty much great or virtually great in like everything or virtually everything he does.
Yeah, that was a kick-ass Dracula. Like, he kicked the shit out of that role, man.
Yeah, although I still think Keanu Reeves was miscast.
Oh, I was about to say that. I was gonna try.
It was alright. I mean, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, Francis Ford Coppola directing, like, Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing kicked ass. Gary Oldman just killed it as Dracula. No pun intended. Like,
Winona Ryder was okay. She was all right.
But then they had Ted Theodore Logan, as Jonathan Harker. I was like,
Jonathan Harker. Whoa. Okay.
It didn't kill the movie.
No, it didn't because of everything else.
He was serviceable. Like, he did his part. Like,
yeah, and
then after the Universal monster movies, which they actually started doing like comedy horror also, because then they started having like Abbott and Costello and all those great comedians of that time. They had like Abbott and Costello meet the Frankenstein's monster or Dracula
and Wolfman.
I thought that was pretty good. But then, well, after that era, there was the Hammer horror. Yeah, with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Yeah,
Vincent Price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which was essentially it's the same monsters but different actors.
Yeah, and but yeah, I think horror fans are also going to remember the Hammer films,
right?
But I think if you were to if you were to talk to like just the casual viewer, as opposed to someone that watches them all the time, they'll be, oh yeah, it's the one with Boris Karloff, like that's the Frankenstein,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein's monster, I should say.
That's the image that comes to mind when people think of Frankenstein. They're gonna think of the Boris Karloff Frankenstein.
Yeah. Now the one movie I thought was underrated, I actually enjoy it, and I have it on DVD too, is the Kenneth Branagh, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, the one with Robert De Niro as Frankenstein's monster? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's more faithful to the book. But yeah, I like the fact that, like this Frankenstein's monster can speak. He doesn't have a name, like he even acknowledges like he doesn't have a name. And the
Which
fact
is
that
part of the whole theme of the story, isn't it?
Yeah, like he's the creature.
And he has trouble, but like the fact that he has no identity, that he can't relate to the world because he's a monster, he has no name.
Yeah, and
that kind of tied into the overall theme of the.
Yeah, and I love that whole scene where he's talking to Victor Frankenstein, I guess in that cave or wherever he's staying at, and he's just talking about how like it's like you can speak. I'm like, well, yeah, I can speak, I can think, and it's like, well, you created me, and you abandoned me, but I want you to, so I don't mess up your life. I want you to create a companion for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's the scene with the famous quote: "If you deny me my wedding day, I will be with you on yours." Something like that.
Yeah. Well, that comes a little bit later, where I think a friend of Victor's, like, she gets killed or something like that, or like a cousin or something. It's like, no, I can't work on her, and that's where the creature's like, well, you promised, you said you were going to do it,
and he tries to Dr. Frankenstein tries to essentially like just
like back out of it, because it happened to be somebody he knew,
right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Jaws earlier. I think at least give a few minutes to Jaws.
That one's fucking scary. Because it can happen.
Right, yeah. That's what, going back to what you were saying about realistic horror.
Yeah.
Which I'm terrified of sharks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of getting into like the ocean or the beach or anything. Now with Jaws, the first one's a classic. Everyone knows Jaws. Everyone knows the theme and the fact that the shark looks fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody still kind of makes that joke. And then Jaws, I really don't remember Jaws 2. It's been a long time.
That's the one that's still there. It's still okay. Like it's good.
I remember Jaws 3D and Part 4, Jaws the Revenge, more so because they were bad. Yeah.
Like, well, Jaws
3D was bad, but it was like a fun bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was during the whole 80s craze of like every
3D.
every part 3 was 3D.
Yeah. Friday the 13th.
Right. But Jaws Revenge Part 4 is just atrocious. Like,
yeah, that one.
Like, it's shameful to the franchise.
You can put that one on the list.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna put that one on the list. You hear that, Jaws the Revenge? You just made the list. To quote Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Every podcast that we're doing, we're making a list of crappy movies for that podcast that will be coming your way soon when we get around to it.
Yeah, and
what about Tremors?
Oh, I like Tremors.
But that's definitely monster horror.
Yeah, that's monster. Yeah. I love the first two.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Tremor movies.
Just part 1 and
part 3 was alright. Part 3 was okay. I don't remember seeing the other ones. I think there's another part 4 and 5 or something like that.
Yeah,
so.
but no.
Yeah, part 1 to me is the only one I've seen, but I liked it. It was interesting.
The only part I think I thought was hokey, and you can correct me. Like the one I think it's part 2 where they not only have the graboids, but they also have the ones that can walk.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. I thought that was a bit hokey, but it was still fun. It was like a fun hokey
But it's like in a franchise like that, it's
something different.
They're kind of allowed to be.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I said it's hokey, but it's a fun hokey.
Well, yeah, it's because like the whole thing is they figured out a method of killing the graboids, which was too good.
Yeah.
Which was silly. Also, the little remote control cars with the dynamite on them.
Yeah.
And they all they have to do is drive it around, and then the tremor's gonna sense the motion and eat it, and then they just detonate it. So they had to adapt. They had to mutate because they were gonna die out. So they started giving birth to like little 2-legged ones that could walk.
Yeah, and that's another, and that movie is another. The first one is another example of it has an ensemble cast. With Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward and even Victor Wong from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that's the funniest death in the movie.
Yeah, but but you actually feel bad when most of these people die. Like you get attached to these characters.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's that little part of the formula that's really not around horror movies.
Yeah,
nowadays. Not nowadays.
And there's actually in the first Tremors, there's actually some genuinely freaky deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one guy that climbs up the tower.
Yeah.
And he never gets killed by a tremor, but he's so terrified that he
gets dehydrated.
He stayed up there till he dehydrated. Like that was actually a little creepy, even though it's like even part 1 of Tremors I think was like there were comedy elements that were intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's intended to have comedy.
Yeah.
But that was creepy, and then the car that gets pulled all the way underground.
Yeah.
And then I think it's part 1 where they pick up the hat and the guy's face is just there.
Yeah, I think that was part 1. And I remember like that teenage kid that was there, and he was like a pain in the ass, and I was really kind of hoping he would
And of course he
get
doesn't.
eaten. Now, of course he doesn't. Yeah. But, so much for hope. Yeah. Let's see, and then Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, that's good.
I remember seeing the first one.
That one's fucking
I remember
creepy.
seeing the first one.
That one's actually very like innovative. I thought it was like original. Like
Mm-hmm.
they managed to put like this over the top monster into like a realistic movie.
Yeah.
Like, and then, but I know the director got in trouble. Like, the director actually got arrested for like some like child molestation charges or something.
What?
Oh wow! I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I might have heard of that.
No, it really happened. Like
Oh, wow.
he ended up getting and then like kind of like the big laugh at the second movie is that it's full of like part two is like full of a lot of like homoerotica.
Mm-hmm.
Like and then it's just ironic that the director ends up like getting arrested for something like that.
Yeah.
But the first movie is good though. The first Jeepers Creepers is like really good. Like the lore is good, the suspense is good, like the tension, like
Mm-hmm.
the story.
Yeah, and but going back to the Universal movies, there is a movie that's very close to our hearts. I say that about a lot of movies, but this one especially because we grew up watching this, and I remember as a kid I was like, wow, I would like to be part of this gang. And it's the Monster Squad.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the Monster Squad.
Like, hell
Yeah.
yes. Had all the. I want to see if I can find the soundtrack of Monster Squad.
It is a cheesy soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's a very cheesy.
But
soundtrack.
I would love to be like driving, like I hate my job. I would love to be like. There's no way that like if I'm driving to work, there's no way that like I'm not gonna get in a good mood like listening to like Rockin' to You Job.
Yeah.
Like there's no way like I'm gonna be like okay, this is putting me in a good mood. Like and it was like the Monster Rally. They had all the Universal monsters in one movie, but it was like a spoof, somewhat.
It was somewhat of a spoof. Actually, that Dracula was actually pretty damn intimidating. I mean, Duncan Rieger,
something like that.
And the fact that he actually picked up a little girl, you know, and just says like, "Give me the amulet, you bitch," like that. You know,
you can't do that now.
Yeah.
You couldn't get away with it.
It's frowned upon. No,
yeah, they'll be like, "Oh, he's going to prison."
But I mean, like, and the part where you know the amulet gets thrown and they open up the whirlpool at the end, and then Frankenstein's monster gets sucked in, and you feel bad.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he was like one of the good, you know, monsters.
Well, they made him like somewhat sympathetic, like the actual Boris Karloff Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Like, and then there was the Wolfman is that the same guy from like Fright Night 2.
Yeah.
And then his character was like they kind of like stayed true to like the Universal horror roots, like the Wolfman, even though it's like a little kid's version of it's like it's basically the Goonies meets the Universal monster.
Well, yeah, if you remember, Wolfman's got nards.
Yeah, Wolfman's got nards. And then but like the Wolfman character is like actually, you know, real sympathetic also, where he just wants to die.
He doesn't want to be this monster, and then but he can't help it. Yeah.
And he's trying to get thrown in jail, and like he's actually like isn't he actually like thankful when he finally somebody shoots him like
when I'm trying to remember who shot him. I think it was the guy. I think it was the older kid in the leather jacket.
I think so.
Yeah, and
Rudy.
I think Rudy. And so he said, once he gets shot, he's like, "Thank you," and then he dies. Yeah.
Which is like it would stay true to the roots, like the Universal monster roots.
Mm-hmm.
Like those were like the main character traits of the original monsters. So like the Frankenstein's monster was sympathetic, and then also the Wolfman.
Yeah, and
Dracula was just completely sinister.
Yeah, but you mentioned like we mentioned Dracula, but I think we can briefly acknowledge like some of the other vampire movies, like Fright Night Part 2.
Fright Night's one of those ones though.
Yeah,
Like
the original.
Yeah. No,
the remake is okay, but the original one with Roddy McDowell,
Chris Sarandon.
Yeah, Chris Sarandon.
No, but I was like, Fright Night's one of those ones. Like I could we can do a whole podcast on just that one movie. Like that's one of those movies that I owned it on VHS. Then I owned it on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I've seen it I don't know how many times.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really like about the movie, as cheesy as it is the soundtrack. Like I would actually go to work and I'd listen to the soundtrack like on my phone.
Cheesy 80s soundtrack.
Yeah, cheesy 80s soundtrack.
Just like the Monster Squad.
But I like my job. I like my job.
Fuck you, Tats.
No, and I remember like ever since I was a kid, I remember like Jerry Dandridge's house in Fright Night.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to live in that house. Like, and I'm still like, now I'm a grown adult, and I'm still like, if I ever became ridiculously wealthy, I would like build a replica of that house for like my wife and I to live in.
Yeah, like even if there are any boxes or anything, like my coworker and I have to move, and if it's something that I can like just pick up with just one hand, I always think of that image from Fright Night where they're moving the coffin into the basement, and you can see the assistant like with both hands because it's a coffin, and it's heavy. You know normally like to a normal human, but to Jerry Dandridge he's just picking it up like with one hand.
Yeah,
you know, like
he's
nothing.
like real he's not. He's standing straight up. He got one hand in his pocket, and the other one just like. Yeah, he's
just holding it with one hand, like if it's
like a basket,
like a cardboard. Yeah, like a cardboard box, just like or a basket. You know, that's the image I always get. Because my coworker is like picking it up with like two hands, and I'm just picking it up with one, which is kind of a dickish move, I know, but still, like that's the one thing that always pops in my head.
Classic.
Yeah. And then last time I remember we mentioned Near Dark with Bill Paxton.
Oh yeah.
And
you know what we didn't talk about though. If we're talking about like great '80s monster movies, and while you brought it into vampire movies, we didn't talk about the Lost Boys.
Oh yeah, the Lost Boys.
We didn't mention that last time. We should at least give a few minutes to the Lost Boys.
Yeah, and
another kick-ass soundtrack.
Yeah, another kick-ass soundtrack, and I actually love the vampires in this movie. Yeah, they're very charismatic, and even Edward Herrmann, who ended up being like the head vampire.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like he's so nice as like a human.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, don't fight. You know, it's better if you don't fight. You know.
And there were all those. He was almost like a red herring. Like you're thinking like it's a mislead.
Yeah.
And like all throughout the movie, and then he ends up being like the
head vampire, and then and I also love the grandpa.
Oh, yeah,
where it's like I love living here, but it's just the goddamn vampires. You know?
Yeah, that part of that's genius. Like they're just looking at him like, really?
Yeah.
He's one of those memorable characters.
Yeah, and another vampire movie from the 90s. This one's from the 90s, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
That's a class. That's another one that, like, for anybody our age, that's a classic.
Yeah, I remember watching that movie all the time.
It's a good movie.
And that's another soundtrack I like too.
Yeah.
I guess you could see a theme going on.
Soundtrack.
Yeah, maybe at one point. Yeah,
yeah.
we could
For in the future, we'll do a whole podcast of horror movie soundtracks.
Yeah, soundtracks, themes.
But From Dusk Till Dawn, that's Robert Rodriguez directing, and then George Clooney's Seth Gecko is like another one of those really quotable characters. Like I know I've used his lines like plenty of times.
Yeah, and no, but I liked all the characters in that movie also, including Salma Hayek for obvious reasons.
Yeah, she's hot.
I'm not saying anything.
She was still really good in the movie, but you know, yeah, and let's see, I'm trying to think of other vampire movies.
Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with a Vampire.
Blade.
Blade. Yeah, that's a good one too.
That's like action horror though.
Yeah, it's more action horror. Now, another one we're gonna mention right now in terms of monster movies, because it's actually gonna be remade, and it's gonna come out this year, is Stephen King's It.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fucking movie's awesome.
Yeah,
It
and
still creeps me out.
and I remember, and a lot of people give the movie flag for like part 2
Hell no.
portion with
That
the
makes it
adults,
worse.
because everybody's like, oh, it's a spider at the end. Yeah, it was.
It's
Yeah.
Stephen King, man. It's gonna be a little off.
It's gonna be a little off. It's not gonna be 100% like the book. I'm actually in the process of reading the book right now. I actually want to finish it before the movie comes out.
I'm eager to see the remake though, because Stephen King himself gave the remake praise. So if the writer of the source material was like clapping and praising the movie, that it's got to be pretty good.
Yeah, and
but Tim Curry's Pennywise.
Oh yeah,
that's a classic.
That's creepy, man.
Iconic horror movie villain.
Yeah,
like I'll kill you all.
Yeah, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Yeah, like they could be scary, but they were more funny.
I think they were funny.
But Pennywise, the dancing clown, that's the one that like everyone got scared of clowns after that.
Yeah.
More so than usual.
It always scared me when I was a little kid when they're looking at the photo album of like the old.
Oh, and the hand comes out. And
Yeah, my
No,
mom.
well, I mean, not so much when Pennywise sticks his hand out, but like when the picture comes to life first.
Yeah.
And you just see him like far off in the distance,
Mm-hmm.
and then he suddenly spots them and comes running towards them.
And the fact that he growls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just him like running towards them in a picture, like that always freaked me out when I was a kid.
Well, what freaked me out was the gutters. Like my mom would always say, "Don't go in there because he's gonna be in there."
Oh, really?
Because I saw it. I remember seeing it with her.
No,
that was a good deterrence to keep kids away from trying to get into the sewage drains.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, one of the parts that actually creeped me out, and it was subtle, is the fact that is the one where Ben Hanscom, where as a little kid, John Ritter's character, like he's remembering when he was a kid, and you see like you just hear Ben. Over here, Ben, the father.
Yeah.
And then you just
scary.
see him. Yeah, you see him waving. It's like, that's my home now, son.
Yeah.
Like that. Like I thought that part was just creepy. The fact that there's a dead relative and then you see them, and they're like, "Oh, come over here," like you'll never have to grow up.
But he's standing like in his military uniform.
Yeah.
Like juxtaposed in like this like marsh area, like like waving and smiling, real creepy. Like yeah, that's scary. Like that's almost like even more scary than the clown itself. Yeah,
and a couple more things before we go. Another, I guess you can consider this a monster character. No, it's not a monster per se, but it's essentially another Stephen King classic, Christine.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, that's one of those where it's like, well, it's a car. Like, how could a car be scary? It's like, Stephen King figured it out.
It'll kill you.
And the thing is, what makes it scary is like, because you're thinking like, well, you can set it on fire, you can demolish it because it can regenerate.
Yeah, it can regenerate. And I also liked the character of Arnie, where he's like this, I guess, quote, innocent nerd, at the beginning, but once he buys that car, like he just like becomes dark and dark and dark and dark.
He slowly starts to like go insane throughout the movie.
He just becomes obsessed with the car.
Yeah,
the car pretty much overtakes him.
I never understood that though. Like exactly what was the Was the car making him insane?
I think so.
Well, the thing, I haven't read the book completely, but I remember, I think on the Blu-ray it mentions, or somewhere it mentions that the in the original story that like Arnie's obsessed with the car, but it's actually the previous driver. Remember what's his name? Robert's Blossom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like when he mentions his brother and his brother was obsessed with the car and stuff. Like it's actually I think him, like the brother that's there in the car with him, like in the story.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, they made it seem like it was kind of like Christine, the car, was like started falling in love with Arnie.
Yeah.
And then like getting jealous anytime anybody else was around.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was also like he was slowly like going more and more mad as the movie progressed. So I was always kind of like, well, which one is it? But I guess leaving it vague makes it better and more interesting.
Yeah, and but like I said, I haven't read the novel. I probably read like the first few pages, and this was when my older brother was still living with us, and then when he moved out, he took the books with him. Yeah,
What an asshole.
yeah. Well, I mean, they were his books. In all fairness, but yeah, and just one really quick before we wrap it up, and I'm gonna recommend this one because it is a bit cheesy, and it's Chud, the Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dweller. The first one, because there are two movies of that, and the first one, it's a little more serious. You know, these groups of what used to be people and they mutated. They're living in the sewers under I want to say it was New York. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure of the city. But Daniel Stern comes out, John Hurt comes out, and even John Goodman, like in a very, very, very small role, comes out. But I thought the movie was very well done. And like I said, they played it very serious, and it's just a matter of this one journalist, or actually, I think he was like a cop, and this journalist, and then like Daniel Stern played this, I think this ex-con that became a cook like at this shelter, and they stumble onto this secret that the city was, or I think I guess one of the, not the mayor, I guess one of the officials in the city that was kind of keeping a secret, where they had all these chemicals and toxic waste in the sewers, and then homeless people were living in the sewers, and then they became mutated.
Oh, I see.
And but yeah, and then part two was more comedic than anything. I would say.
So it has that shady, corrupt government element to it.
Yeah. Even though it was like a local government,
like government shitting on the little people theme.
Yeah, like it's a victimless crime, and we're doing this thing, and then part two, like I said, it was a little more comedic. It was taken less seriously. If I would recommend part two only as almost like if you kind of want to riff through it, because it's one of those where like you just make fun of it as it's playing along, and it has Robert Vaughn also. So, all right. So, perhaps at one point in the future, we're gonna focus on other subgenres or subgenre. Like psychological horror, we'll probably have an episode just dedicated to that. Yeah, and of course, at one point we do want to bring up all the either awesomely bad or incredibly shitty.
Yeah,
we are making a list.
Mm-hmm. Other ideas we have in mind, for instance, the best and worst, probably in separate episodes, like the best and worst, remakes, sequels, prequels.
Yeah.
Spin-offs, that kind of thing. And of course the one we mentioned a little while ago, the horror soundtracks and themes, like the Halloween theme and things like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, I could see that easily.
Yeah, and if our listeners haven't heard of them, hey, we can even recommend some songs.
Oh yeah.
And if they're from the '80s, most of them are going to be cheesy. So if you're really into '80s cheese, you're gonna love some if not most of those soundtracks.
But anybody that listens, like, feel free to give us your feedback and comments. Try to keep it constructive, as we said before. Like, anything we missed, or like your opinion about things that we mentioned, like,
yeah, because when it comes to different subgenre, like I said, some of these subgenre, if not most of them, are so massive that we definitely miss some movies here and there.
Yeah, there's just so many.
Yeah, so feel free to let us know. Like, what about this movie? What about that movie? But like I said, like,
well, that's kind of like the point of, like, why we started this. Like,
yeah,
get feedback and hear different perspectives about different things, and all things horror.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, so this is Toots,
Damien,
Worm Boy.
and we're signing off. So see you next time.
See ya.
Peace.